Okay, so welcome to episode 1 of Arguments and Logic. I'm joined by cybersecurity superstar Robert Sykes, and I was going to start in a chronological order, like how Lucy invented cybersecurity. The only person who has possibly taken almost as many classes as this professor looking other than me is this professor looking guy, Mr. Sykes. He has a little bit of a background in anthropology before he switched majors. What was it, 10 more times? Something like that?
At least,
At
yeah.
least. But he finally landed on cybersecurity and IT. But no, we're not going to do chronological order. We're not going to do the most important thing either. What we want to talk about is what the people really, really, really want, to quote the Spice Girls, and that is how Barbie invented the atom bomb. And you're thinking, what does that have to do with cybersecurity? Well, not a whole lot, because Barbie did not invent.
Nobody has any idea.
No one, no one. But Barbie's out. There's a lot of excitement in the pop culture about the Barbie movie and then also Oppenheimer. And there was a lot of social engineering that surrounded Mr. Oppenheimer, not only after the atom bomb was released, but also just leading up to that event. And social engineering and the human factor continue to play a role, just as it did at the time the KGB was trying to crack that code. Still, the same thing exists today, whether we're talking about the war in Ukraine or we're talking about, you know, corporate espionage. It's a thing. What would you say about
But
the?
that, yeah, I mean, and I'm just going to jump right in here. I'm only a professor. I just play one on TV. I'm not actually any kind of professor. I've worked in information technology for a long time. Working in information technology, there's always cybersecurity has always been at the forefront of everything for as long as my career has gone on. I was an early victim of the blaster worm, which most people don't even remember what that is. But that was one of the first real big worms to hit corporate America. And I worked at a newspaper then, and we ran around like unplugging computers, like frantically trying to stop the worm's propagation through our network. Anyways, that being said, yeah, social engineering, like that, honestly, that is the number one attack vector. That is the number one thing. Cyber attacks have become so sophisticated these days that they, the days of like you getting a malformed email and clicking on the link and then being wrecked are still a thing, but they're much more sophisticated now. And what they do is they use many different types of vectors to achieve their goal. Their goal is to get access to a system. And so they may send you a text message, they may peruse your Facebook page and post a message on there. They may, just gather your phone number over here and your email address over here and your like family members over there, and they kind of culminate all this data together to use that in an effort to attack. And bringing it full circle back to Oppenheimer, that's where this really started. I mean, this kind of idea has been going on for hundreds of years in warfare, probably thousands of years, right? I mean, even if you watch something like Washington Spies, this kind of thing was going on even then. And that's what it is. It's all about social engineering. It's about getting to know the target, getting to know them, finding out what they like and what they don't like, and then exploiting those weaknesses.
And on that thought, when we were doing due diligence to prepare for this,
All that due diligence, yes, a
yeah,
lot of it,
it was a lot. Um,
hours and hours.
Hours, literally. Anyway, we discussed by text the so-called simulation, which evidently was more of a thought experiment that the U.S. Air Force did. of a AI controlled drone attack in which the drone attacks the human operator. And your thought when we discussed that was that, well, that'll have to be the way to go, is that you'll need to have a human agent at all times, at least for the foreseeable future. And my thought is, and let's see what you think because you're the expert, at least compared to myself,
Loosely the
that,
expert.
well, all things being equal, right? Relatively. That said, even if we were to hand more control over to an AI, the AI is no less vulnerable when it comes to cybersecurity, even if it's something more benign than the human agent, because I've read multiple stories about the AIs being manipulated with clever prompts. So social engineering exists even for the innocent AI. It's not too different than the human because the AI was designed by a human.
Yeah, I would totally agree, and I would even say that it's probably easier to manipulate the AI than it would be a real human being because, a real human being is gonna, make assumptions like you've asked me that question 17 times in different ways. Like there must be something that you're getting at, right? And the AI isn't. It's just gonna keep answering and like trying to give you what you're looking for. Honestly, the the fervor at which we are pressing on with the AI and now it's going to be the next thing. Dude, I've been doing technology for so long. Like there's always a next thing. There's always a next thing that's going to change the world, that's going to end jobs, that's going to do our things for us. And ultimately, it's just another tool. And I think that's what AI is. And yeah, to get back to your point, um, AI is great for a lot of things, and it's really helpful to truncate data. It's really helpful to parse data. Every new cybersecurity like MDR that comes out, which is managed detection and response for everyone out there that doesn't know what MDR is, but when you're monitoring cybersecurity systems and you're monitoring cyber systems, there's thousands of alerts that are coming in all day, every day. You got your endpoints, you got your firewalls, you got all these things that are getting data. And like to filter that noise is very difficult for a real person to do. And so most of these MBRs and most of these SOCs, security operation centers, they now these days employ AI in order to kind of filter that noise. And then as these alerts get triggered, the AI goes, I think this is something bad, and they push it over to an actual security analyst who then looks at it and decides whether or not it's a real threat or not. And that's great. That's a perfect utilization of AI, and it's changed cybersecurity, and it's allowed us to do things that would have been impossible. But conversely, as if I was a hacker, if I was a hacker, I would, or someone who was trying to defeat one of these systems, I would simply learn all I could about how these AIs work and then try to bypass anything that might trigger them. Right. And so if it's 40 alerts and so, in less than 10 seconds is what triggers it to up the ante, right? And like flag it a little higher, then maybe I only do 9 alerts, right? And so there's all kinds of, it's anything can be defeated. That's the thing. Like there's nothing that can't be defeated. We're never going to get there. And so AI has its place, but it's not going to be the end all be all that we seem to think it's going to be.
Now, I know you're one of the least political people these days, and I'm not going to do red team versus blue team thing, but I found this recent iteration of the whole Trump secret documents case to be somewhat hilarious as I circle back to the IT issue. and I was watching some other podcast, and I stopped paying attention until I heard something along the lines of Pool Boy asked IT guy to delete the server, and IT guy said, "I don't know how to delete the server. I'm not going to do that." And I thought, whether we're talking about the whole controversy a few years back with Hillary and the server and Benghazi or whatever that was, or now this thing in Mar-a-Lago, I thought it was fitting that the IT guy, independent of Team Red or Team Blue, bringing it back to the human element, is not willing to delete the server.
Yeah, I know. I heard that too, and I was like, that's interesting. Is it that he couldn't delete the server, didn't know how to delete the server, or didn't want to delete the server and just said that he couldn't delete the server? And so, and also like that whole terminology is just delete the server is just rife with like someone who doesn't know what, never done any IT work in their life. Because I mean, I guess if it's a VMware cluster, then yes, you technically can delete the object that is the server. But this idea that you delete the server, I mean, why wouldn't you just format the server or like delete the data off the server or whatever the case may be? So, and I don't know anything about the IT guy or they're talking about though, but it definitely piqued my interest in my Google feed when I saw that. Like, what does that mean? He didn't know how to delete the server. Like, what does that mean?
Right. Yeah, I kind of thought that he was not willing to do whatever it is that they thought he could do, and there was a faint possibility that what they were asking him to do might physically be impossible anyway. But
Yeah,
I
yeah. I
think
mean, you're right. It's the human element there. Like, what? I mean, I would just say no. If I mean, maybe he didn't feel comfortable, but yeah, there's definitely the human element there where, um, yeah, we as IT professionals will sometimes say that we can't do things because it's easier than explaining why we shouldn't do things.
now you mentioned your Google feed. Speaking of what could be a clickbait article, if I were to write a clickbait article, it might be something along the lines of, "You thought authentication was tough. Imagine how what a shit show it'll be after quantum computing becomes a thing."
Yeah, I I know. I know. I think that I think that people who do what I do, I mean, I'm sure there's people that are looking into it and are really at the forefront of that idea, but I have just been kind of ignoring that thought because I honestly and I hope that there's a bunch of people that are out there that are smarter than me to figure this out because you're talking like 256-bit encryption cracked in milliseconds with some of these quantum computers that they're talking about with the processing power. So I mean, what do you do? You know, the only caveat, and so what I did was I moved away from passwords and a lot of the MFA stuff, and I've been testing this hardware device, which is a hardware key. So after LastPass was breached, I was like, well, storing this stuff in the cloud and like using these different devices for multi-factor authentication, if it's not something that I don't have physical with me, like I'm really taking a risk. So I started looking into hardware keys, like a physical device that I have with me that then I have to sync with my computer and press and physically press a button, which of course that could probably be, you could probably figure out a way to trigger a button push or something, people that are smarter than me, but that was the next step. So I think that there's going to have to be something with hardware based encryption where we go back to the old RSA tokens, And you know, it's really hard to know what that's going to mean in real terms once that comes out, because you know, with modern computing, it's pretty easy. This is why we as IT professionals tell you to have like really complex passwords that are at least 16 characters long, and it's because it's derived off of processing power. You know, so 20 years ago, an 8 character password with a couple of special characters was secure because you need to have a supercomputer to crack it. You know, if you just want to brute force crack it, brute force attack it, right? But processing, because of Moore's law, has become so exponentially higher now that the average computer can crack an 8 character password in a matter of minutes. And so this is why we're like 16 characters and 23 characters. And you're like, God damn, this IT guy, I hate him. He's always making me change my password. It's got to be super complex. And that's simply because, you know, the processing power behind these computers is so much higher. And now with pooled resources where I can use more than one computer to do these things, you know, it doesn't take very long to crack passwords. And so you throw quantum computing into the mix, and yeah, I hope I retire before that.
Well, speaking of retirement, uh, what are your thoughts on finding bon voyage with the aliens and maybe taking your next IT job with them? Since apparently, according to the congressional hearings and my Google feed and TikTok, aliens are a thing. It's a thing, and I don't know if it's military technology, but maybe they can help us out with the IT. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, it could probably would make it worse initially before it would make it better. That's usually what we do with technology. To bring a full circle back to Oppenheimer, we split the atom to blow fucking people up. Sorry, oh, I don't know if I'm supposed to cuss in this podcast, but we split the atom to blow people up, not to solve energy needs. The energy came afterwards, so more than likely they would be like, cool, lasers, they blow up tanks faster than what we have now. And then later we would get to, oh, this technology is good for humanity and will help us, you know, in some form or fashion. But
So,
yeah, I go ahead.
oh, what I'm hearing is if we promise the aliens we'll only use it for authentication, they probably won't believe us. So
Yeah,
not sure.
if they're smart,
Yeah.
if they have any sense and have been watching us for any time at all, you know, it's such an interesting thought as to what that actually is and what these things are. You know, is this just the culmination of every sci-fi show where they, you know, slowly release this data over years to where like now we have so many things in our news feed and there's so many things that pop up all the time. They're like, yeah, now we'll tell them aliens are real because nobody gives a shit anymore. And like everything's out of people's feed within 30 seconds anyways. They'll be on to the next Britney Spears, or they'll be on to the next, I'm aging myself, whoever the newest pop star is, right?
Taylor Swift, she's still popular.
Yeah, yeah, Taylor Swift or Ryan Gosling or whatever it is, right? Like there won't be any, and that's kind of how these things have gone. They're kind of just quietly, you know, I was reading one of I don't know if it was a NASA report or just one of the astronomy outposts that they use. I was reading on some of their reports and how these objects that they've identified are hard, like they can't really be explained, and they're not known. Um, they're not governed by the bounds of any kind of like astrological object that's not man-made or something made. And it's just that was in and out of my feed in like in like an hour, you know, and I was just like reading this thing going, whoa, this is really, really interesting stuff. And you don't hear anything about it. You know, you hear more about Barbie and Trump's documents
Right.
than that, you know. So who knows? It's hard to tell. Is it just some cool new military tech, like, or is it really something out there?
Yeah, yeah, good point. I think I saw a video where if this is military tech, then evidently we not only have the power to defy the laws of physics, but we could end world hunger. We could end the need for anyone to ever lose power for the rest of humanity. But instead, we're just keeping it secret and letting people think it's aliens. So either way, it's kind of messed up. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, which is pretty much par for the course for most military tech, right? I mean, you know, most government tech, we could do a whole lot of good with it, and we typically don't. You know, there's a whole lot of stuff we've done with, you know, on the ground water treatment systems for military. You know, do you think like we just parachute people into some jungle somewhere and they don't have clean drinking water? No, we have that figured out. We can drop in and we can be cleaning drinking water in a matter of hours, typically, in a large scale. You know, do we deploy that technology anywhere else? Is that an easily usable technology? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know enough about it, but I know that there's thousands of countries out there that don't have clean drinking water. It's like one of the number one things the WHO flags as a problem is lack of clean drinking water.
Well, on that happy note, here at Arguments and Logic, we always like to end our episode with our super special guests like yourself by asking them if you were to write a fortune cookie for the future of technology, what would that be?
Oh man, that is a good question. I am totally unprepared for this. A fortune cookie for the future of technology. Man, it's going to be just super dark, but let's just do a super dark one.
Go for it.
Be careful what you post. It'll be with you for all times.
Uh, that's gold. Well, thank you, Robert, Mr. Sykes, for being our very first guest on episode 1.
Hell yeah, episode 1 in the books, boy.
Boy, yes. Arguments and Logic. We did it. Thank you, sir.
Yes. All right, man. Later.